In this segment, I'm going to talk about using the Wings Modular software to make edits to designs. And up until now, all of the training that I've recorded for this DVD has been about the Creative Drawings program, which is what we use to create objects, to apply crystal outlines or fills to them, or add lettering, and all of the different array and tools that we've learned so far about the Creative Drawings program. And I think to get started with Wings Modular, what I'll do is just create a couple of embroidery objects and then send them over to that program and see what kind of editing we could do with them there. So I've just created a couple of objects. I'm going to use the rectangular selection tool to select them and give them both a satin serial border. I'll select them both and set them to have no fill, so they're just outlines only. And maybe I'll just change the color of one of them to be red, so I have a red object and a blue object. It really doesn't matter. As long as you've got some embroidery that you've created and you'd like to use that with your embroidery editing software with the Wings Modular, then what we need to do is export it to there. And before I would export it, any time you create a design in Creative Drawings, I think it's always advisable to save the draw file first, because you may want to make edits to the design here in Drawings at a later time. The style of editing that we're going to do over in Wings Modular is more colors or stitch-based editing, and it's not so much about creating the design. So you may want to come back to this. So I would start by simply saying File, Save As. Choose a folder on your computer where you like to save your designs. So browse to the folder where you're going to save your design and give it a name. I'll just call this oval.draw and save it. So I like to always remind people of that. Save your designs because sending it to the editor is like exporting it into a different program, and you may forget over here to save it. Nevertheless, when you're ready, say File and Export to Editor. And that'll actually open up the Wings Modular program with the design that we'd created loaded into the workspace. Now, I thought what I could do is just overview the Wings Modular program and explain, I guess, first of all, Wings Modular is another embroidery software that can open and save embroidery formats, and it's sort of the beginning level of a commercial digitizing program called Wings. And so this is the basic level. And it gives us the ability to, first of all, open and save any embroidery format. So not only can you make edits to designs that we created in Creative Drawings, but if you wanted to, you could open any embroidery design. If I choose open, it gives me the sort of a window that would enable me to browse through. This is the samples that came with the Creative Drawing software, and I could easily select a design in here and then say open, and it would become a design that's open in my Wings Modular program. Now notice I've just opened this motorcycle design, but we didn't close the other design. So if I come to the window drop down menu, we can see here that my the design that I brought over, the oval, it's still available. It's just called Untitled, but I can switch back and forth between the two designs that I've opened up. So the motorcycle's one and the oval's the other one. So you have some basic editing capabilities in here, and maybe what I'll do is just review the workspace a little bit. So at the top you've got some file drop-down menus. Most of the things on here are going to be found as tools in the toolbars as well, but there are certain things that aren't. I'll just maybe review the drop-down menus now. So here you've got open and save. One thing you'll notice when you look here at import and export is that these are talking about embroidery machine floppy diskettes, which is sort of a commercial embroidery machine. Like, for example, a Baird embroidery machine might take a specifically formatted floppy diskette. And so you can see that parts of the Wings Modular software are included, but maybe not necessarily the intended use is going to be somebody who's playing with artistic crystal software. So you may not need to worry about everything that's included here. But just to review, so yes, we could send the design that we're looking at to the printer. if you choose browse, it'll actually open up a browser here in your workspace and leave it open. So it gives you sort of like the folders of your computer and makes it easy to browse through the contents of the folders and select designs. And if you notice now in the window drop-down menu, it becomes another choice. So I can go back to the motorcycle, or I can go back to the original ovals that we'd made, and I can switch back to the icon browser and open up another design. If I want to open a design, I literally just select it and then double click, and it'll open up in the Wings Modular window. So perhaps let me look at the motorcycle. So here's a design. Now, I guess looking through some of the other drop-down menus, the edit drop-down menu has some of the editing tools like undo and redo and copy and paste and unselect and select all, group and ungroup. So these are things that some of them we would have learned about just using the Creative Drawings program, but I'll demonstrate a few of these things here. They also have tools on the toolbars. All of these different options here are going to be found on your toolbars, so we'll come back to the toolbars. Under the View drop-down menu, you have some of the more or less types of settings that you can control. So your grid options and your guidelines. If you want to set these things up, you can have specific spacing for things like guidelines and a grid. A crosshair, well, basically that just puts a big cross to follow your mouse wherever it goes. And again, that kind of gives it a nice professional, kind of old-fashioned digitizing feel, I guess. So I can turn it on and off. These would be turn on and off, like checkboxes to turn on and off. Also under that View drop-down menu, you've got the fabric, change your fabric choice. So right now, if I wanted to, I could choose a style of fabric for the project, and then that may influence the way when the design is saved. It can, if you're regenerating stitches for any reason, this will help the software help know what style of underlay or density that would be appropriate. So you have all the different styles of embroidery, and this is again very much the same as it was in the Creative Drawings, where you can select a style of fabric. Okay. In here you can check your toolbars that are turned on and off, and roll-ups, that your roll-ups are shown or not shown. And what a roll-up means, for example, here on the right, these are the roll-ups, the image map and the sequence manager. And so here's the image map down here. It basically, if I zoom in on closely over the design, you can see the place that I've zoomed into shown as a little box here in the image map, and I can actually click and drag this little box to without zooming in or out, just to move around or kind of pan around my design. So that's your image map. And they're called roll-ups because there's a little push pin here, and if I wanted to, I could automatically hide this. So if I click on the push pin, it will roll it up, and notice that the image map is now on the side of my workspace, but it's like a little tab, and if I mouse away from it, it just rolls up and hides it. So the other big toolbar that was on the right hand side that's also a roll-up is the sequence viewer. And with the sequence viewer, you can actually see the different colors of your design. So for example, the motorcycle here, you can see the different colors of the design. So here's the blue color, and I can easily select all of the objects in the blue color just by clicking on that color here in the sequence viewer. And notice there's a plus beside these colors. That means that you could actually expand that and see the individual objects. So obviously this color of blue has got several objects that are included in the color, and you could go through them all, or if you want to, you just use the minus to minimize all of the to collapse the view instead of expand, it's collapse, and you can select an entire color this way. So you can see if there's any specialized commands, like I can see in here that there may be some thread trim commands involved in this motorcycle design. And so that's what the sequence viewer is for. It helps you to be able to see the way a design is going to sew. You could, for example, change the sewing order. So for example, right now, if I selected, let's just say, for example, this blue color, I could go to the layout drop-down menu and choose to move that to the front or to the back, or forward one step or backwards one step. So that would be way of changing the sewing order of the design. Under the Stitches drop-down menu, you have the ability to apply some filters like remove small stitches or automatic density control. And so primarily in Wings Modular, it's a stitch-based editor, and we can actually go in and make some specific, move or delete individual stitches. But it does have the ability to do like an automatic density adjustment. So if you've got a design you would like to try, you can select the design and choose auto density and apply that. And now it's telling me that I've made a change, and so that this design is locked, and that regenerating, because it's a stitch file that I opened up, if I regenerate it, I may get, it's telling me that things might get changed. And I can either say yes or no. If I say no, it'll leave everything exactly as is. If I say yes, it's going to regenerate the stitches. If I say yes and it asks me again, it's because there's more than one place in this design that it considers to be locked. So I would need to say yes to all, and then it'll just go in and process through the command of auto density control through the design. So it went through and did it. It was just warning me, and the reason for that, just maybe as a quick example, here on the left-hand menu, we have this transform selection. If I select an object, it shows me the object with a transformation box. But if I change to edit stitches, you have the ability to actually go in and specifically select one stitch like that. And I'll show you how we can move one stitch. So I'm just click and drag to move that stitch to a new location. Or if I right click over the stitch, I can ask it to insert a new stitch. And so I've now got the ability to add a whole nother stitch to the design. And you get to insert stitches, as you can see here. So you can insert stitches, you can delete stitches, and you can move or replace stitches. So that's one thing that when it talks about regenerating, if I was to try and change this design, oops, I clicked off. Whoops, I clicked off my window, and so I just have to find the Wings Modulars here. I just minimized the other program for now. So the design is, if I wanted to, for example, select this box and move it, it's going to give me that same warning that says if I regenerate these stitches, I may lose those changes. And if I say yes, it'll regenerate the stitches, and those edits were made. If I had said no, it would have not regenerated the stitches and therefore not lost those changes. So it's a little side note. I'll talk about this a little bit more as I go through the tools. So that's your Stitches menu. In the Tools menu, well, basically you just have an Options box here, and this is going to be the way that you can set things, the way the software is going to work. Detecting your monitor display and the things that sort of general information to do with, I guess this has to do with floppy diskettes, but the number of undo levels. There's a bunch of different things that you can control in here, like the types of fonts and sizes. So that's what the Options box is all about. Just some generalized settings for the program, and I'll let you review those. As you know, you always have the Help menu, and so if you need to learn something specific, as obviously within these videos I won't have covered all of the details of these programs, you have the ability to go to your help contents, search for help from within the program itself. You can also go to help and show help on, which gives you the little question mark over top of your mouse, and then the next time you click on something, so for example if I click on this transform or edit stitches button, it'll bring up the help menu specifically with the stitch editor chapter that I may want to read about, so you can see how that you can learn more about these things. In the window drop-down menu, I think I already showed you here how I can use this to change between the different designs that have been opened up. And the other options in here are going to be things like, I guess, tiling. So if I wanted to, I could actually get all of my designs to be like little icons. See that? So it made them all like little windows. And then I could open the different windows by clicking on them. So it's a different way of viewing, I guess, iconic, or you could tile your windows and have them all kind of tiled. And yeah, so it may help you find things or just fill up your space. Okay, so let's move along a little bit with the demonstration. So that's the drop-down menus, and now we have your toolbar at the top where you've got the ability to open, save, copy, paste, edit the designs. This is, for example, this is select all. And so when I use select all, it's going to select all of the objects of my design. This would be deselect all to not select all the objects of my design. If I selected what's, for example, just one object, and then this one here is called invert selection. And so it will unselect the object that I have selected and select all of the rest of the objects in the design. So you can see that this one is no longer selected, but everything else is. And then if I want to, I can choose unselect to unselect everything. This is some viewing tools. This is for viewing objects. So let me, I'll try and just examine this. So this will jump to the beginning of the design. And it shows me the very first object of the design. Now, if I jump, this jumps to the end of the design, shows me the last object of the design. Now, if I go to the beginning and then choose to jump forward, it'll show me one object at a time through the design. And so you can go forwards and backwards. Now, beside that, you have some different ways of viewing the designs. And what I'll maybe do is zoom in on this a little closer. So for example, this option right here will show me the needle marks. So if I look now really closely, you can see that it's put like a little mark on top of every needle penetration. And so that's just an on and off option. Show needle marks on or off. And this one here, show up to cursor, well, that depends on where where you travel your cursor to. So just as an example, if I choose this stitch editing tool and then select a stitch, why don't we just select one of the stitches inside of this tire outline that I moved, and then I'll choose show up to. And now everything that is up to this point is stitched, and everything that comes after is not stitched, it's hidden. See that? So it's called show up to cursor. And the option beside that is saying show hide outlines. And so if I turn that on, see, it takes away the fills behind all the colors. So it's basically just giving you a background color to show you where the object is. That's what that's going to do. Now, what else can I show you here? I think what I'll do is talk about the color sequencing. So this toolbar here is your color manager, and you can, I guess just as an example, if I was to, why don't I minus these things, why don't I select a color by just clicking on it here. So we'll select the dark blue here just by clicking on it, and maybe see if I can minimize it so it's just all one little group. Okay, so I've got that blue color selected, and then what I'm going to do is just come up and say, well, if I wanted it to be pink, I could just click on it, on that color in my color palette, and you'll see that it's adjusted those objects to be this purple color or pink color. Now, I could, by the way, I still see blue objects, but that's only going to be because blue showed up in the color sequence more than once. Somewhere, yeah, see, here's blue again, that if you wanted to, you could edit all. You can understand, you would select a color and then click on here to change the color. You can also, if you click on this little, this is like to edit the color palette, this little color wheel. If I click on that, it opens up the color management window, which gives me the ability to, I guess just as an example here, you can choose from all different brands of thread that you might want to work with. You can, this shows me the colors in my design. It shows me the ones that have been used. It also shows me the ones that weren't used, but that were sort of part of the design. I could change a color. So as an example, if I don't like the magenta that I had selected, maybe I'd really like it to be black. then I could select it over here, then come over to the color list, scroll through until I find the color black right here, and then say set color. And I change the magenta to be now black. And if I said OK, I would be done with that. So I actually changed the whole color in my color palette to be black. And in general, that's how the color toolbar works. You can choose different colors from your color toolbar here, or you can go into the color management system and use that to change the different colors on the color palette. So now to the right of the color palette, you have some different commands that can be inserted into a design. You've got thread trim, stop, kneel up, frame out or in, sequin, borer, applique, low speed, and the borer depth. Now, I haven't actually used all of these commands myself because I think they have different places or different commercial applications where you may want to use them, but certainly you could use this to insert a stop command or a thread trim command. And so to show you how you would do that, just as an example, why don't I just go even over to the simple little ovals that we'd started with and show, okay, if I use the transform tool to select something, then I'm going to be able to move the location of this object or make changes to it. But if I choose the edit stitches option and then zoom in over top of the design and then show how as soon as I hover over a stitch mark, it actually kind of highlights it, and I could select that stitch point. And so once I've selected a stitch point, I would have the ability to insert one of these commands. So for example, right at this spot, I could insert a thread trim command. And you can see that by the little icon that it puts there at that place of my design. So you can select a different location and then choose to insert a command into the design like that. So those are one way of doing editing stitches, and another way of editing stitches is going to be when you select the individual stitches and then either click and drag to move those stitches to new locations, or like I showed, just using the right click to insert new stitches or delete stitches from the design. So generally speaking, that concept of right clicking, there's always sort of a secondary menu. For example, if I was to come over to my sequence viewer and right click over top of it, I could ask it to split by function and color, or split by color, and if I choose split by color, it'll just show me my design sort of based on the colors. If you have it split by function or by object, then it's going to show you, it basically shows you all of the objects underneath each color. So you can see here that this color that I'm looking at now actually has a thread trim that's been inserted into it. So that's kind of how the stitch editing works. It's the modes. You're either in the transform mode where you can select an object and move it. And notice what happened right now. It says stitch editing has been done. And if I look closely, I'm just going to say no. See, there's the editing. I removed a stitch. And what it's telling me is when I try and select it and when I try and move its location, it says if it regenerates the stitches, it might lose that data. And if I said yes, go ahead, regenerate the stitches, see, it actually added the stitch back into the design. So that can be a really great thing, is that it remembers when you make small stitch edits, and you'll have at least get warned that maybe you could lose them. Now, another function of this program would be, for example, to scale the design. And so if I choose scale design, it gives me the ability, it tells me the size currently, and then if I change it, for example, if I make it 80% smaller, then it'll tell me what the new size is going to be, and it made it 80 on the X and Y because this proportions, keep proportions is checked on, but you could uncheck that if you wanted to change the proportion of your design. And when I say OK, it reduces the size of the embroidery. So it's still showing me, I guess, the image of the original embroidery prior to my changes, but of course you can see that I've made changes to the location and size of these objects, so they I guess no longer match the original. The other thing you have in here is the rotate design option. And so if I come in here and ask it to rotate this design by, I don't know, 25 degrees, say OK, you can see that it rotated those objects to be 25 degrees. So that's the left-hand toolbar. You have transform and edit, and then I guess you have zoom in, which you can choose the zoom tool. There's actually a little flyout, so you've got zoom in, zoom out, zoom all, panning, and then zoom out. If I said zoom all, it'll zoom into everything on my screen. But I like to use the scroll because I have a scroll mouse. I have the ability to scroll down to get to zoom out and scroll up to zoom in. Okay, so I think that concludes the segment that I wanted to record about the Wings Modular. Certainly there's more to it than what I've shown, but in general, I think that's primarily the core functions of the program and what you're going to use it for, or what you could use it for. So go ahead and peruse the show help menu and learn more if you have specific questions about this program.